It's time now for the week that was, when we take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we'll start with President Bola Tinubu's visit to Lagos this week. On Wednesday, he joined other Muslim faithful in Lagos to observe the Eid al-Kabir prayers at the former State House located at Dodan Barracks in Obalende. Tinubu, who returned to Lagos on Monday after a trip to Paris for a global summit and London for a private visit, arrived at the prayer ground to the cheers of supporters and political associates. This is the first time he will be visiting the state after he was sworn in as Nigeria's 16th president. Tinubu prayed for Nigeria's peace and encouraged citizens not to give up yet on the nation, as the future ahead remains promising. Other prominent Nigerians at the prayers include the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, Lagos State Deputy Governor Obafemi Hamzat, former ministers Babatunde Fashola and Senator Musiliu Obanikoro, among others.
Nigeria will see peace, stability, and God will grant peace to those of us who are in the war front. We spare their life, we give them victory. Those in the hospitals, we give them succor and peace, and keep them in good health, path to recovery. So he will just be spiritually uplifting. Have faith. Allah is there. Thank you.
It is only Allah that has made it possible. The weight of Nigeria, is not the weight that any normal, ordinary human being can carry, except with the help of Almighty Allah. It is evident, therefore, that the Almighty Allah is with our president. He is carrying the weight for him. It is clear to Mr. President, and it is clear to us, and those of us who fear God, that he will not be where he is today, not for the benevolence of God.
All right, Sheito, I mean, a bit of American swag there on the part of the president. But of course, his message was not lost on the nation. It was his first visit as the city boy, as homeboy, in Lagos State. And he started on a prayerful note, speaking as the president that he is, and as an elder statesman, saying that under my watch, Nigeria will prosper, and urging people not to give up yet. I wouldn't know why the president would be thinking that people might be considering giving up. Will it be that the last 8 years that Nigerians witnessed was not really palatable? But hey, here he is giving hope, because the plank upon which he ran for office was renewed hope. And I like the fact that the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, also spoke in similar fashion. It looks to me like the type of Chief of Staff that we will have in Gbajabiamila will be a bit different from the previous ones who were seen more but heard less. But this is a man who knows Ashwaji very well. He has been with him politically speaking for more than 20 years. And, he's now his right-hand person, and he can stand in for the president when it comes to speaking to the nation, reiterating the things that the president, will have said or will have loved to, say. I think that that started on a good note as far as we,
I definitely agree with you. And I, like you said, city boys of this. This is one point for our president. I mean, we did see him go to France and then a private visit to London, and now he's back in Nigeria. And I remember when, there were a lot of videos that were circulating, his convoy, how people were kind of happy to see him. There's a divide as to how come there's so many cars.
The 124.
The 124. But
clarify that neatly.
Yes. But you could tell that even, the Lagosians were happy to see him back. And of course, this week we had the Salah celebrations. And I really like the message that the president was preaching. No religious identity, no tribal identity. The fact that we all have to live together in joy and prosperity. It's a very important message. Absolutely. Seeing the fact that Nigeria right now is polarized. And, after the elections, we could see this back and forth on religion and, and tribe. But the fact that he used this opportunity to kind of remind us that we are one regardless. And it also speaks to, the fact that he's not necessarily coming in as, oh, I'm just a Muslim president. I'm the kind of a Yoruba president. I am one for all, and all for one pan-Nigerian president. So I'm really happy about that.
That's right.
But still talking about President Bola Tinubu, he was also in Ogun State this week, and this is his first since becoming the president of Nigeria on May 29. Now, Tinubu expressed gratitude to the people of Ogun, especially the traditional ruler, for the support extended to him during the campaign and since his assumption of office as president. Now, he remained optimistic of emerging victorious in the February 25, 2023 presidential poll, despite obstacles thrown in his way, like what he called the ineffective cashless policy implemented by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Tinubu recalled that the Emilokan declaration started in Ogun State and ultimately manifested. Tokunbo Oyetunji has the details.
A month after he became Nigeria's leader, President Bola Tinubu is embarking on a visit to Ogun State in what has been tagged a thank you visit to traditional rulers and the people of the state. The president's first port of call is the palace of the paramount ruler of Ijebu land, Obasikiru Adetono, who has been his staunch supporter since their days in the trenches for Nigeria's democratic freedom.
Having in the Gateway State, the #1 citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
There is excitement in the air as Mr. President's visit to Ogun is his first to any state since his inauguration, and the people show it in the way they welcome the #1 citizen who notes the prominent role that the state played in making his dream of leading Nigeria becoming a reality.
On behalf of Our Royal Majesty, the entire people, government of this great state, it is my pleasure, and indeed a humble one at that, to welcome you to Ogun State, to welcome you to Ijebu, to welcome you to our revered Kabiesi's palace.
The royal father, Obadetono, speaking mostly in Yoruba, is full of praises for the president and his leadership style as he acknowledges him as an instrument that God has chosen to correct some wrongs in Nigeria.
It
was here in Ogun State that then aspirant and candidate Tinubu made some famous pronouncements, including the famous Emilokan, or "It's my turn" phrase, as well as his lamentation over the cashless policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. President Tinubu recounts those moments during this visit and describes them as an invocation of the spirit of freedom and determination as symbolized by the royal father to overcome the obstacles in the build-up to the presidential election.
You've demonstrated so much loyalty, so much commitment, voted at a very crucial time. Your monies were confiscated. The cash swap didn't work. It was terrible then. I realized that. And I came to Ogun State to invoke the spirit of freedom for which we are noted for. I invoke that spirit twice. The spirit of Baba is a Milokan.
The president immediately enters into a closed-door session with Oba Adetono, details of which are not made available to journalists. From Ijebu-Ode, the president moves further down to another location, this time the state capital, Abeokuta, where he also pays a visit to the Alake of Egbaland, Oba Adedotun Gbadebo. The visit follows the same pattern as the earlier, just to acknowledge the royal father and the people of Egba for their support and solicit more of such in the days ahead as he leads Nigeria. Tokunbo Oyetunji, Arise News, Lagos.
This is definitely still part of, what we're talking about, the spirit of unity. And like we saw there on Thursday, the president visited the Awujale of Ijebu land, His Royal Majesty Oba Sikiru Kayode Adetono in his palace. And of course, in the same day, he also visited the Alake of Egba land, Oba Adedotun Gbadebo. And I think what really stood out for me, in these visits is the fact that he said that he called on the spirit of Emilokan, and that was really what him invoking the spirit of freedom and the determination was what helped him to overcome pole obstacles, and he also pledged to fulfill all the promises and urged Nigerians, of course, not to be in a hurry and all of that. But I found that very interesting that he said that. So is there something that I'm missing here? Is there a spirit of Emilokan that I can also tap into for things that I want?
Claim it if you
and
like.
It's yours.
But I mean, it's left for people to determine what, decode what the president, was trying to say there in Ijebu, especially where Ijebu, where he said that he, he tapped into he invoked the spirit of freedom because it was in Ogun State, in Abeokuta, specifically that he specifically voiced out, as it will be said even by, modern day religions that say it, claim it, decree it into existence. I think that's what Asiwaju is saying. But it will be left to people to decide whether he was speaking in a literal manner or in a spiritual manner. But either way, you see what has become of the Emilokan slogan. And not only has it become a buzzword that can leave the contemporary Yoruba lexicon, just like Eleyi that he used in describing the governor of Abeokuta State. But it had also transformed into something of a prayer point, in churches and mosques, people claiming it and saying that the same way that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu declared that it was his time, you too can declare that it is your time, whether you are trying to engage in a different business, whether you are, hoping for something, whether you are looking for, anything that you're looking for, say that it is your turn. That's a spiritual, affirmative, aspect of it. I just hope that other traditional rulers, particularly in the Southwest,
will
not feel jealous because what he did, it was meant to visit 3, but he did 2, Ijebu-Ode and Abeokuta. And the optics were quite right. They were just quite right. He also talked politics about the cash, the cashless policy of the CBN and everything, and how it affected him. Remember that it was in Abeokuta that he also said that that no matter what you do with the new Naira notes, we will still win, and we will still vote, and we'll still win. So I think that Ogun State is very much important, to him when it comes to decreeing things into existence, and that's what Asiwaju Bola Ahmed has done there.
Yes.
All right, so we'll proceed. Sierra Leone's president, Julius Maada Bio, has been sworn in after being declared the winner of an election which his main rival described as not credible. 59-year-old Maada Bio returns for a second term at the helm of the West African nation, which has been pummeled by multiple challenges since the end of the civil war between 1991 and 2002, an Ebola epidemic, and now a crippling economic crisis. The Electoral Commission announced that he had won 56% of the vote, while his main challenger, Samura Kamara, came second with 41%.
I hereby certify certified that Bio Julius Mada, having pulled 1,566,932 of the valid vote cast, representing 56.17% of the total valid vote cast in the 24th June 2023 presidential election, duly elected President of the Republic.
All right, so Shaitan, I mean, Sierra Leone was in the news. It will look for the right reasons, particularly for those who are the supporters of the incumbent president, Bio, who defeated the same Camara in 2018. You know that Camara was a foreign affairs minister in Sierra Leone before, and it represents, interestingly, the APC of their own country, all People's Congress. And like the APC here, he's 72. But unlike the APC here that won, he lost with 41%. But of course, he's claiming that the elections didn't go well and that he won the election, but he wasn't declared. I think our own former Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, was one of the election observers, I think. And it looks to me like, at least from the majority of the supporters of the president, it looks like it was a bit of a popular affirmation of his second term. If he proceeds, the law requires him to take up to 55% before he could be declared so that he will avoid a rerun, which he has done. Yes. He got more than 56% of the votes. We think that, of course, it might be challenging court, but if it scales through, I think that this will be an opportunity for his government to fully stabilize. He's been there since 2018, but you know that the trajectory, the recent history of Sierra Leone has not been the most fantastic. After civil war, to Ebola, to economic crisis, not a rich country by any stretch of the imagination, but with a lot of potential. And I think it's those potentials that the president will need to consolidate on and, make that country count within the ECOWAS sub-region. Definitely. And, just to further talk about the point that you made, that it looks as if this particular result, I spoke with someone earlier this week that was on ground in Sierra Leone, and then also looking at everything that had happened. So people were expecting maybe there was going to be an uproar for those that were not necessarily wanting the incumbent president to come back. Yeah. But what we've seen is peace and stability, and people just moving around their daily business, trying to make sure that, this particular incumbent president does what he needs to do. But I think what is really important is that under President Bio's watch, inflation in Sierra Leone is at the highest ever. The currency is at its worst. The country has one of the highest unemployment rates in West Africa. And in fact, that in itself led to protests back in 2022. So the question on the minds of a lot of people is that, okay, does President Bio have the capacity to lead Sierra Leone through its economic recovery? And how confident are people in his leadership skills? And like you said, Sierra Leone is a country that already has a history, coming from the war and even, disease with Ebola. So a lot of people have said that it's not his fault, it's just a case of him inheriting a devastating situation. But at this point, he really needs to buckle down, and really just try to make sure that he can bring the Sierra Leonean people out of, the economic devastation that they find themselves in. But, an election has come and gone, they have handled it in the best possible way, I believe. Following Nigeria's election, and of course, people were thinking that Nigeria too, because of the three-horse race thing, that maybe there will be issues. But everybody is saying, hey, the president has been sworn in, people are in court if they feel aggrieved. It looks to me like that's the same thing that will happen in Sierra Leone. And after all said and done, at 56% plus, it looks to me like there are more people who probably want him to consolidate more on what he's doing than those who might think that a 72-year-old man, should come and replace him at this point in their national life. I think that, people should give him a chance and let Sierra Leone roar back to life, and let Freetown become that that lovely little city that people used to, go to before the war. And I mean, there's a lot that they can do. And if they get it right politically, the economic benefits can follow.
Definitely. I agree. So let's move on now to our next story. The head of the Wagner mercenary group has defended his armed mutiny in Russia, saying he had no intention to change the political regime. In an 11-minute audio recording, Yevgeny Prigozhin explains that his so-called march for justice was to prove the strength of his men and the weakness of Moscow's security system and military leaders whom he blamed for mistakes in Ukraine. The Kremlin had said Mr. Prigozhin had agreed to go into exile in Belarus and that the fighters who joined the march on Moscow will not be prosecuted for treason. However, recent acts of rebellion by the Wagner mercenary group in Ukraine against Russia has continued to generate concerns in Africa, especially in countries where its leader had earlier turned to the group to help reinforce their stay in office. Unfortunately, the aborted rebellion was believed to have brought unease to many parts of Africa, where some of the leaders who had earlier turned to the Wagner group now face the possibility that the private paramilitary organization could be weakened or even dismantled.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yes, very. And I'd like to get your take on it, because even I'm looking at this and I'm like, how did we possibly get here? But I want to get your thoughts on it first.
How did we possibly get to it? I mean, you know that the Russian government has been in bed for a long time, with the Wagner group. And what is happening is that now that Russia is in the eye of the storm as far as international politics is concerned, people will infiltrate. The stakes are very high in the business of war. And clearly, what the Wagner Group has been doing for years, if not decades, has been to, is to make themselves available for procurement, as mercenaries, as paramilitary group. And that's what, everything that they have done in Ukraine, it is through Russia's endorsement and push and finance. So with a 25,000 man army, I mean, that's a waiting mercenary that anybody can use. But will that go on forever? Especially now that, Russia is challenged, with the NATO countries, among some of its neighbors, apart from Belarus and a few other countries, and of course with the United States of America. It's a matter of time before we begin to see this type of cracks. Is the Wagner Group the first sort of major crack that will create a kind of infiltration into the superpower that Russia represents? It looks to me like that's what is happening. How can this possibly affect Africa? You know that a number, particularly in the Sahel region, number of African countries have been turning to Russia instead of the French government, which has always provided, security for many of them: Mali, Niger, Chad, Burkina Faso, all of them. So when you see coups happening in those areas, it's because anything you are doing with Russia, Russia doesn't have like limitless number of soldiers that they can send. It's people like this that they can procure that they send to Africa. Africa, particularly the Francophone Africa, will now have to reassess its reliance on Russia-backed paramilitary groups, and that is what is happening. And that is if, Putin himself survives it. But from what we have seen, I don't think that President Putin will forgive so easily, especially when he has declared that this is an act of betrayal. I suspect that he will go after him.
Just very quickly, I mean, yesterday President Joe Biden did also made it very clear to his allies and to Moscow that they were not involved in the Wagner mercenary group's uprising in Russia over the weekend. So you can see that the U.S. is very quick to wash their hands off of this particular situation.
What would you expect them to say? The Yorubas will say, "Olele fo."
You're always coming with the wise saying.
No, because nobody has accused America, but it's just coming out to say, no, we don't know anything about it. We're not involved in it. All right, we move on to our next, possibly the last story for today. African leaders and officials of several regional organizations meet in Angola to discuss the security crisis in Eastern DRC, plagued by violence from various armed groups. The leaders recalled that the DRC Congo is a country rich in diverse resources, but that the local populations live in extreme poverty, mainly because of the conflict, considering that the regional blocs must be actors of peace and stability. The president of the African Union considered that the deterioration of the situation in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo destabilizes the country and defended efforts to make the country a source of happiness and not of conflict. The need for pacification in eastern DR Congo, where military tension persists and this country opposes Rwanda, is the focus of the summit.
It is widely acknowledged that all the organizations present here have the same mission, that is clearing the Great Lakes region of a conflict that is irremediably delaying national development plans and, consequently, jeopardizing the much sought-after agenda of regional and continental integration.
Our commitment to helping restore peace and security in the region is becoming a major imperative in terms of respecting our principles and remaining true to our flagship project, silencing the guns.
At this four-party summit, we must therefore intensify our exchanges so that we can actively contribute to finding a solution for a peaceful, secure, and prosperous Congo. And to achieve this, I believe we must put forward appropriate political, diplomatic, and security solutions.
All right, Shaitan, little to say about this, other than to commend the intervention of the African leaders. There are some of the African leaders who are saying that we can't allow Congo, DRC Congo, to go back, to the dogs. Whatever issues they might have, particularly in the Eastern Bloc, with Rwanda, let it be sorted politically, diplomatically, and otherwise, so that, the economy of that country can thrive. And I think that it's a good move on the part of those African leaders. We commend them. Let's hope that the best will come out of it.
Definitely, I agree. Like you said, I think what's really important is the fact that they need to continue to have, political and, security, diplomatic solutions, and just trying to make sure that they are effective. And because, whether we like it or not, the DRC is important. And if you're not able to curb the insecurity and, all of everything that it's plagued with in the moment, it's something that will, in fact, affect the rest of the entire region and even the continent of Africa. But like you said, they just need to be commended, and hopefully something tangible comes out of this.